I'm going to say that again in a second when that's gone. Hold on 1 second. Okay, what was I saying?
But if you don't come to me and something happens to you, then, oh, Jannine, my neighbour's calling me. Hello, Jannine. Oh, what are the chances of that? Both of us.
Welcome to ADHD Wise Podcast. I'm Jannine Perryman, and this is a space for open conversations about ADHD and neurodiversity, bringing together lived experience, professional insights, and the questions that help us move forward. Wherever you are in your journey, you are welcome here. Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of ADHD Wise Podcast. Today I'm joined by Michaela from Spilling the Tea on Autism and ADHD, and we're going to talk parenty stuff, sense stuff, and lived experience of being a grown-up raising beautiful children who are bringing their amazing challenges and strengths. Hello Michaela, how are you doing today?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. Yes, doing good, and it's lovely to be here at last. We've done it.
At last, yes, because we did plan to, didn't we? Before I'd even launched the podcast, we had a conversation, and actually, the group of us that were part of that conversation around Every Child Matters did say at some point we'd like to do a collective podcasty type thing on, and we called ourselves the Witches of Send. Because I firmly believe if I'd been alive back in the day, I probably would have been burnt at the stake. I think that, I think that the trouble that we make by saying what needs to be said.
I know we've said before, I think it was on one of those threads when we were saying about it, that it's funny how like the modern day kind of version is now we just get blocked on social media. But yeah, definitely for what we've had to, for just speaking the truth is that's bad enough. Go and get on stage, like see you later. Just to be able to speak up. And it really makes you feel, doesn't it? Like, oh my gosh, yeah, back in that time, we would have definitely been one of those. And my other half actually bought me a t-shirt that says, "We are the granddaughters of the women you burnt at the stake." I was like, this is us. Yeah, it is just crazy, isn't it? The level of, by just speaking up about your own experiences, how that can trigger such really strong reactions from different individuals that you just feel like, this is my experience and I have no place in making up these things. Why would I want to make up such awful things and have to carry that, and that frightens me, that people often think that, and it's like, gosh, I wouldn't have exposed myself to the world had that have been just a lie, or something I felt bored enough to do.
It's not like we sort of like went into parenting thinking we were going to have to fight for the rights of our children. I don't think parents become parents think, right, okay, I need to learn how to change a nappy. I need to know how to do this. I need to learn how to sort of give discipline but not overdo it. And I need to sort of like learn how to communicate. I need to understand children's mental health. I need to learn how to give cowpole and all those things. And I need to learn how to fight for my child's rights. It's not on the list of things that we're going to need, how to make sure the bath temperature is correct and everything else, but not I'm going to learn how need to learn how to fight for my children's rights, because I'm going to have to go, I'm going to want to. No, it wasn't on our agenda. I never thought I was going to have to do that.
No, and I remember writing one day, I was writing a piece about just destroying the parenting manual, because I remembered when I was expecting my first daughter, I remembered somebody saying to me, oh, and you have a look at this. And one of my friends had bought me, you must have seen it, Jannine, What to Expect When You're Expecting. And for the first 5 years. And I remembered sitting there reading through all the different phases and thinking, oh, by about 3 months old, she should have got herself into some sort of routine and life will sort of start to make sense for her. And as she grows, it will become easier. And I'm reading it thinking, oh, this sounds quite nice. And then when she was born and I was thrown into this world of, actually, she didn't sleep the whole night until she was 3.5 years old. And I remembered this whole time I'm questioning myself, like, is it me? Have I done something? I've, like you said, I know how to feed her. I know how to change her. I know how to make sure that she's safe and keep her warm. And I know what clothes she should be wearing. And I've done all this stuff and I've gone over it about 3 or 4 times thinking, but my baby doesn't sleep. My baby doesn't want to play with the toys like they say that she should be playing with them. And she was really, really, really advanced. So she was potty trained by 9 months old. And it was like, and I remember saying to the health visitor, she was like, well, it's early, so I wouldn't say it's anything necessary to worry about. And I was like, okay, but I've never met a 9-month-old baby that takes their nappy off to go to the toilet. Like, this is crazy. And you just, all these questions, don't you? And I sort of remember thinking, wow. And now here we are nearly 16 years later. And I'm there thinking, oh, well, now I've had to learn all the different kind of laws around education. And I've had to find the loopholes in these laws to secure things for my child that should have been there, but actually they've found another loophole, which meant they've squirmed out of that. And doing all of that whilst kind of thinking, I thought I was just going to have to change nappies and feed her with milk. And then once she got to about secondary age, I thought that she would be independent and kind of do her own thing. And then we would be kind of on our way to that next step of independence and not really wanting me around anymore. Whereas actually, I feel like we went backwards and we then went through another phase of, Mum, I need you with me all of the time, because life in school had got to a point where it was so horrendous for her that she needed me 24/7. And I felt like I'd reverted back to that first few months of having this baby and needing to be there with her 24/7. And nobody, everybody around me was just couldn't understand it. And I was struggling to understand it. And there's so much confusion. And I remembered questioning myself so much and thinking, gosh, is it because of me? Like, have I done this to her? But then obviously when she turned 7, she was diagnosed as autistic. And I was like, oh, right. But even that nobody had explained to me then, that autism can present in girls. It was only because I sat and researched everything I could find that autism in girls displayed characteristically a lot of the time how she was displaying it, and she was this typical tomboy, she liked to play with her toys, but in a different way to what they should be played with. And she was really, really academically bright, and she didn't really have any sort of learning difficulties as such, but socially and emotionally and sensory wise, very, very tough. And as soon as I read that, I just thought, oh my gosh, all along, from day one, this has been what's been going on for her. And nobody's realized this, not even I, because she was my first baby. I had nothing to compare it to. And then obviously later on, finding out that I had autism, I then was like, well, that's even more why I looked at her and thought, well, she's fine, because she was like me.
She's just my mini me, which is what I did with my eldest, who is also autistic. Yeah, I did the same. I was like, when they were telling me there was something going on with this child, I was like, no, she's fine. She's just like me. She's just fine. She's just my mini me. And then, like, many years later, it kind of like made sense. It's like, oh, well, that's why I missed it. But just want to say to you, Michaela, we are you same with me, same with you, is that, and so many people that will be listening, we know our children, but we shouldn't be expected to be experts in SEND law, in neurodiversity, in children's mental health. No one expects that. We expect that if our child's got a struggle, that we're going to be interfacing with professionals who are going to fill in those gaps for us. And I'm not going to speak for you, but you can tell me in a second whether you found this. For me, I don't feel like I found those professionals. But then I had to become that professional. I got into the profession of special needs because my own children's needs were not met. So that was what empowered me. Empowered is kind of like a calling. It was like, I need to switch gear, and I need to be available for my child. So I went into education. And in doing so, I kind of learned more and more and more and more and more, and then became this nuisance of a professional who tells everybody else you're not doing it well enough. But it is this whole thing of we became these professionals because we didn't find them when we needed them.
Yeah, I do think that, and I feel very similar. I really feel like you say, I've really struggled to find nobody who I spoke to or with, apart from actually, we had a really good educational psychologist one time, and she said to me, her words to me were, "Your child is unsafe at school." And I remembered sitting there thinking, well, that's what I've been thinking all along, but I was too scared to say it out loud because they'd made me feel like I couldn't, like I couldn't say that. And it was wrong of me to think that. So a lot of the time I went into these meetings, the ones you have during the blooming school days, and they call you in, and I'm sat there and I feel obliged to agree with what they're saying. But the whole time inside, I was like, you don't understand. You don't get what I'm saying. You don't understand what she needs. And I do remember sitting there thinking, now as my kind of advocacy has kind of upped, and I'm sat there thinking exactly what you just said. I feel like I am evolving into what I needed kind of 3, 4, 5 years ago. And I feel like I just want to be that. It sounds really silly, maybe, but I want to be that hand that just is there for somebody just to hold, even if it's just to say, you're doing things right for the sake of your child, and only you know what that is. Nobody else can tell you what is the complete right thing to do. And that was a real big kind of wake up call, I think, for me. Hearing so many professionals speak about my child while I'm sat there going, no, she's not like that. She doesn't do that. She does this. And then kind of them going, well, this is what she needs. And I remember sitting there thinking, my child wants to be able to tell you what she needs, but she doesn't trust you enough to do that. So therefore it's for me. And that's when I had one meeting I walked out of and I just sat in the car and cried. And from that day onwards, I vowed to myself that I was never going to let them make me feel like I couldn't speak again for what she needed. So that was a big wake up call, and realizing that actually nobody understands her like I do. And she needs me to be that voice. I was scared. I remember feeling, when you can hear your voice shaking almost in your own kind of head. And I remember sitting there thinking, I've just got to say it. And as soon as I sort of sat down, I just remembered blurting out, this isn't working anymore. And then that was it. It kind of opened that floodgate to, okay, we're going to get somewhere this time. And I think I just walked out of there and felt, I do remember feeling better, but so scared because I was like, oh my gosh, I've just spoke up in front of like 4 or 5 different teachers and Senko and everybody there, and thinking, have I just done something immensely wrong? But no, obviously we hadn't. But that's how it made me feel.
It's an interesting one because when I was doing my SEN specialist and teacher training, we studied the Warnock report, which was the report that basically informed statements before and the HCPs now. And one of the things that Mary Warnock's report was very clear on was that parents need to be a protective factor against schools and local authorities who are not seeing it or not applying things as they should be. Actually predicted a lot of what we are now seeing. And the disempowering of parents is a big concern to both you and I. We talk about this quite a lot, don't we? It's like, because with the best will in the world, mistakes will happen, the professionals won't see things. But with let's and then remove the benefit of the doubt for those people, because those people definitely exist and those situations definitely exist. And then there's those who literally are more concerned with the money and getting all children to sort of all be the same and sort of go on the conveyor belt of the education journey. And yeah, our children are the ones who are seen as lower value. And there was when EHCPs came about, and Ofsted was doing its thing at the same time, there were literally courses being ran, CPDs for schools, which taught leadership how to manage children like ours out. The lower value students, the higher cost, lower value students, how to manage them out. And honestly, Michaela, we're recording this on Friday. It's going to go out on Wednesday. So it's very, very topical. They're talking about NEET children. So that's as children who are not in employment, education or training. So these are your young adults. And I just think, well, duh. What did you think was going to happen when we didn't look after them, when we tried to funnel them through a system and a process that wasn't built for them, doesn't allow for anything, and is only really built on compliance culture? And I was listening to a podcast. I listened to the News Agents podcast, and I was listening to them talking about this, and they had an expert on whose name I will look up because I definitely want to email him. And I just think everyone's missing the point, because they were talking about children's mental health and young people's mental health. And I'm like, what did we think was going to happen when all we are giving children is a curriculum? And we're not interested in the whole child. We're not interested in developing them as an individual. We are literally interested in funneling them through. And you're just destroying children in the process, and then wondering why they hit adulthood and they don't want to come out of their bedrooms. They don't trust the world, and they don't have the social skills, etc. And well, I'll let you comment on that, but then remind me, because I might forget. I don't want to talk to you about whether or not you played outside when you were a child, but go respond to what I've just said first.
I agree, Jannine, because honestly, when I saw it on Sky News, an article popped up, and it was saying, however many, I think, was it over 1 million children now, or young people not
Which is a new record, yeah.
Yeah. And the first thing I said to myself was, well, is it any wonder? We have cut down all of that. So there's no youth services really anymore. There's nothing for young people to access, when they kind of leave school, but are kind of in two minds of what to do. It's kind of, you have to leave school, go to college, or stay on at sixth form. And, we kind of dwindled away apprenticeships. And at one point, they were such a good way to get children, out of education, but still learning and earning and, all of that. And I sat there and I just thought, not only are from an early age, children are being, failed by the system, there's absolute zero early intervention. You're very lucky if you manage to get the early intervention. So you've got a few years in those prime years where children are left just to fend for themselves in the education system. And, if you manage to kind of get through primary age kind of school, and okay, great, you've made it through primary, but here comes the big kicker of secondary school. And wow, that's when things really ramp up, don't they? And I think they say that the average age of school refusal was about 11 or something like that. So typically in line with kind of starting secondary settings. And okay, so we've not had early intervention. So struggles may or may not have been identified. But even if struggles have been identified and diagnoses are made, or there is no support after that either. Unless you fight for it, you're not going to get it. And it shouldn't have to be that way. What if you don't have parents who have, who are capable to fight for you? What if your parents are disabled? What if you have foster parents, or carers, or all of these children that don't have anybody to speak up for them? And so they're kind of lost under this system, or they're on waiting lists for years, and they're kind of dwindling up in and out of this, might need support, but is slowly drowning under the weight and the pressure as it builds with age. And then they get to that kind of real hard turning point of something starts happening at school and they can't cope, or the pressure's too much, or perhaps they're being picked on and bullied, or perhaps it's just not the right setting. Perhaps they just don't feel like they belong there. And that then everything kind of adds to the pot, doesn't it, of mental health,
yeah.
And everything kind of builds. And then you have a child that perhaps I remember, I mean, with my daughter, it was different. She wanted to go to school, but when she got there, the support wasn't there for her. So it would always end with a phone call by 10, 11 o'clock. Can you come and collect her because she's overwhelmed, or she's run over the school gates, or they'd ring me and just say, we don't know where she is. And then that was even more frightening because I was like, well, I left her with you, so you should know where she is. So we've got all of that. And I mean, is it any wonder after children being literally dismissed for having struggles, being punished for struggling, being excluded, is it any wonder by the time they get to kind of early adulthood that they feel so disengaged from the system and they can't engage with strangers who want to know what's wrong with them and why they're feeling the way that they feel? Because in their head, these people, if they cared, would have done something a long time ago. And,
Yeah.
and that, like, I remember my daughter was told by one professional, oh, well, maybe if you wasn't so, your attitude needs to change. That was it. Your attitude needs to change. The way you view disappointment is not good enough. I was like, she's been traumatized by years of teaching professionals not meeting her needs. She's been told things that she shouldn't have been told by professionals. And to hear that, I just thought, you have no idea how and why she does come across this way, because she is so on the defensive, because she's just waiting to be let down again and again. And that, me, that, is anyone, the kids don't have a drive, there's no incentive. Like, you can work hard nowadays, and our kids are seeing the effect it's having on us. What's the point in going to work in a crappy office job if I'm never going to even be able to do anything with it anyway? And I'm like, okay, right. I think they're just
We are
more.
literally our children now. I look at, because my children are Vicky's 33 and the twins 23, and I look at my 23-year-olds more than Vicky, and I think, are they going to be able to buy a house? Are they going to be able to afford to run a car? Now, both of them do actually run a car, but it's not a given that they're going to be able to do that. They are literally now working to put money in the pockets of billionaires, because and actually this is what's happening now for our children, is that they are working for the benefit of billionaires, and to literally just pay their way hand to mouth. And how is that inspiring? How is that going to get them through the difficult times? How is that going to develop the grit that they need to? So they've got compliance culture at school. Go down this funnel. We are going to teach you, and you are going to be happy about it. You are going to comply. Well, we're not happy about it. And so many of our children cannot comply. And we are forcing them out because we are all so narrow in what we will do. We are not developing our children, and then we are blaming our children for being a snowflake generation who are sat in their rooms, which is the bit I wanted to come to, where I wanted to ask you what your childhood was like. Not like in great detail and sort of like your personal details, but for me, I was allowed to go out to play. In fact, it was kind of essential that I went out to play. I learned and made mistakes from being out and about with people. But then when my children were out and about, I had people come up to me and shame me and shout at me for not watching my children all of the time. Now, how are they supposed to develop the workplace skills, the negotiation skills, the grit and the determination that you have to learn to function as an adult if you are going through this truncation of education? And then your parents are so busy and everybody is so busy and evenings are spent on devices. If parents let you out to play, they will be criticised, and you will be tarred with being whatever as a child, just for being outside. It's not safe. Actually, I don't know that it's not safe, because I lived by the river and I just used to play and climb trees and stuff. But I just think, what did we expect would happen when we are literally just, their lives are supposed to be like this. But their lives should be open and broad and rich and varied. But our children are now being taught at, and they're not involved in their own learning. they're not social learning. They're just complying if they can, which a lot of our children can't.
For us, it's been, so my eldest is going to be 16 this year, and where we live, our road outside is a quiet side road. So from the age of about 8, 9, she always wanted to go up and down on the pathway on her skateboard. So I was always like, yeah, I can see you from the living room. That's fine. Just stay off of the road. I can see you. So I would quite often sit outside the front. And she was really good friends with a girl that lived a couple of doors down. And it was really funny, actually, because they both were into skateboards and they had built little ramps, and they would go out the front and they would go on their ramps. And, that we had one summer where they spent most of their summer literally just riding up and down the same bit of road, but they were out there and they would come in and, they would bombard my freezer, and then they would take everything outside. And it really took me back. And I was like, yes, this is what I need to see you doing. And it was amazing. But then I noticed the shift as soon as they kind of got to about 12, where they started to look a little bit older. And I obviously said to her, you can go a little bit further now. We live on a really big estate, and there are no massive roads. So I was always quite like, you're sensible, you know not to go here and there. And there's a little park at the end of the road. So you can go play at the park with your friends as long as you're sort of all together. That's cool. You can do that. And you know what, Jannine, the amount of other parents that I had come to my door, oh, well, your daughter's done this, your daughter's done that. And I'm like, well, what has she done? Oh, well, she was arguing with my daughter. And I was like, as long as they haven't got fisticuffs, and they're going at each other. Oh, but your daughter shouted at me. And I was like, so tell her, feel free to put her in her place. You don't need to make her feel bad for this experience. They're learning, they're kids, they're learning all the time. And all of these little interactions are going to help them for the next time that they go out and the time that they come across a situation. And then eventually, now she's that little bit older. She goes off out and does things, with her friends sometimes. But I do feel that, like you say, that constant negative energy of, oh, well, your kid's blocking the path because they've built a ramp. Okay, yeah, it's not ideal, but the grass verge is huge. You can walk around them. They're kids, they're having fun. Can they just be allowed to be children?
I think it's a real shame. And I don't know about you, but I was allowed to play out. Were you allowed to play out?
All the time, Jannine. Do you know what? In the morning, and my mum would say to me in the summer holidays, make sure you've got your sun cream on. So I would put my sun cream on and my hat. It was always my hat and my sun cream. And she would give me about £1.50. And because we lived near a local shop, so it was always, if you get that hot, get yourself a drink or an ice cream. And there was a little water fountain down by the little river where we used to live. So we were all really, really just like dirty and would just stand there drinking out this water tower, and it didn't matter. We were like 11, 12 years old. And we used to make those swings that went across the little streams. And I loved it. And my mum would say to me, when the lights come on, you need to make sure you're home. And I'd say,
yes.
Okay. And if I wasn't, I knew about it, like it was like, oh gosh, I'm upset. But we were trusted, weren't we, to just enjoy being kids and go out and have fun.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody really moaned unless you kind of ran out in front of a car and nearly got yourself killed. Nobody really bothered. It was kind of like kids will be kids. They're playing. And it was nice to see children outside.
Yeah. And it was normal to see children outside. And there was a campaign many, many years ago, do you know where your kids are? And actually, I think that was really bad for society, because actually you're not supposed to know where your kids are at all times. That's a fallacy. Children are supposed to go and make mistakes. You are supposed to keep them safe. That is part of your responsibility. You are supposed to guide them. They are supposed to be able to sort of lean into you. I'm big on saying to parents, do let your children play, but do put things in place and also make it so that they can tell you anything. But one of the protective factors in all of this, and it's true with online stuff as well, is your children need to be able to come to you with anything and everything. And even if you're cross with them, they need to know that you're in their corner. And that's allyship from a sort of like you don't want to be your child's best friend because that's actually not appropriate, but you do want them to feel like you are in their corner regardless, and that you're going to look after them, look out for them.
Both of my girls all of the time. I might get cross with you and I might seem upset with you, if you come to me. But that's the whole point, because if you don't come to me, then I can't put things in place. I can't help you. I would rather what you say upset me or make me feel cross. I said, because I can get over that, and like you can get over that. We can deal with it. So yeah, I've always tried to make it really clear to them both, it doesn't matter if you see me get upset. It doesn't matter if you see me get a bit cross, or I might be frustrated at something that you've done, because that's where you're learning. Like, learning doesn't happen without sometimes upsetting a few people or making mistakes. I just feel like children aren't allowed to make mistakes anymore. They're treated as if they're fully
compliance culture.
Yeah. And then we wonder why they grow up and they go, well, I'm so absolutely sick to death of doing everything that way. I just want to do it my own way. I want to be able to do things that are different. I want to be able to try different things and go down different avenues that aren't the 9 to 5 average job. And like they keep saying, they want to ban social media or this. I'm like, but is that maybe because children have learned that actually there's money to be made behind this? That's a nice way of being able to have a flexible working schedule without the commitment of showing up to work every day. And there's so much more kind of options for them now that doesn't involve going to an office and doing a 9 to 5 job. And it really makes me sad that that's what they're kind of being conditioned for. And it doesn't really exist very often anymore.
No, the world has changed, and I think that there are merits to the idea that we're going to not have phones in school potentially, but I can also see that this is really, really problematic. So I think we kind of like need some more sort of like nuanced understanding. But I think we also have to look at what is lacking in the opportunities that we're giving to children. That means they are become so dependent on their phones. But we do also need to tackle the tech companies, because they are absolutely exploiting the availability of our children and the want of our children, and devices and the stuff that's on devices is designed to pull children in. So there's a whole conversation around how do we make it safe, which is different conversation to should we just ban it. Very, very different conversations. I can see both sides of the argument. And I think back to my eldest daughter, who's autistic ADHD with learning difficulties, and her social life, even now as a 33-year-old, is almost exclusively online, and her friends are in a combination of Australia and America and Canada and the UK, and there's always somebody available for her to talk to. I also want to say that when we were going through this process, there were times when I really worried about her, and I worried about her safety, and because she was quite naive, and we did have to do quite a lot of work around helping her to understand what's safe, what's not safe, what you do in this situation, what you do in that situation. But ultimately, it was, if you are unsure, if you're unsure at all, you come to me and we will sit down and we will talk about it and we will unpick it together. And Vicky now has this community of wonderful people who are neurodivergent like she is, who love things like My Little Pony, Pokemon, whatever it happens to be. And Vicky does a lot of cosplay type things and, voiceover acting and that sort of stuff in her community. And her friends and people who are close to her know that she has that protection here. But it was also her friends online who, when Vicky needed to disclose something, they were the ones saying, Vicky, you need to go and tell your mum. And if you don't, we're going to. And it was kind of like, that there's a protective factor to online, but you have to help our children. Children have to be taught how to interface online and stay safe, and to not internalize all those negative messages, because negative messages are really there. But one of the beautiful things about my Vicky is that I'm kind of tangenting here in a bit, but I think it's important to say, I remember when she was about 17 and she started wearing cat's ears every day. And I was like, Vicky, you can't do that. You're going to get the wrong attention. You're going to get bullied. And she went, no, I'm wearing cat ears every day and I don't care. I am going to do it. And did I have to intervene a couple of times when people were being mean on the bus? Yes. But Vicky, she taught me so much about allowing our children to be who they are. And people are meaner. They are meaner in person sometimes to how they can be online, and vice versa. It's kind of like just depends on your people. But you get rubbish people everywhere.
Yeah. And I think,
and the protective factor is your pet. Them knowing they can come to you is the thing, right?
and just to be able to get that out of their head and onto somewhere where it's out of here, and it helps to clear that, doesn't it? It almost like a factory reset after going through, like, our thing has always been, I allow, like, I mean, Sahara's 16 and I think she's on TikTok. I think that's all she kind of really uses, and she has WhatsApp with her friends. And it was hard, and it's been hard the last few years, especially with trouble, like you say, with online, the bullying side of things, and how things would come home from school and continue on WhatsApp and through all of this. And it took her a long time, but now she's at a point where she goes, I know that I don't cope well with being in group chats. So she says, please don't add me to the group chats because I can't deal with it. And it always ends up with somebody arguing or somebody sending something really unkind, and then it upsets somebody, and then everybody's upset. So it was just learning how to use it responsibly and know that it can be really, really amazing in some aspects. Like she loves online gaming. And like you say with your daughter, she's got some amazing friends, and she's got friends that she's speaking French the other day to a young boy that she'd met in France, and they'd connected and they'd done video calls over, while they've been playing online together. And I was like, that just opens up a whole new world, doesn't it? Of just online friendship, like kind of pen pals, but an online pen pal. And and when she was in the depths of going through everything at school, and she was out of school for nearly 2 years, the online community showed up for her, and gave her something to feel like she wasn't a problem, and it made her feel safe because she could vent to these friends that she'd made online, and speak to them. And it gave her somebody, something to her day whenever all the routine had gone out of the window for her. And it just gave her a point in the day where she was like, we're going to meet up online. And there was about 5 of them, all on a group call, all playing the same game, but talking to one another while they're playing, and they're concentrating on the game. So they're free to kind of chat, and it was very comfortable, very relaxed. And it was the first time I'd ever actually felt like I'd seen her have a conversation with other children that wasn't forced and felt comfortable. So that's always been our push, I think it works. And I think kids and devices and, tech, it works as long as you as a parent ensure that, they're safe. They know what's safe, and they know that if they don't feel safe, that they need to tell someone. And and it's removing that barrier, isn't it? And making sure that tech companies are not allowed to put so much algorithm stuff on there that's just wrong, so wrong. But there's there's so many ways you can look at it, and I do feel like I see it from both sides, but I do feel like tech companies need to be held accountable. There's that word again, accountability. If they were held accountable, then for the content that's allowed to be put out there, then children could have a safer experience of that.
So there's apparently a thing where if a child takes a photograph of themselves, a selfie, and then deletes it quickly, that alerts the algorithm that this child has probably got a bit of an insecurity, and it will start bombarding them with stuff.
Wow. It's just crazy, isn't
And
it?
you look at it like that and you say, do you know what? If that is easy enough for them to detect, it's easy enough for somebody else to come along and work out how you stop it. You know, because that stuff should be absolutely illegal. And that is, for me, more of the issue than
Yeah.
um
It's the
than
self-harm.
banning it completely.
Yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, I just, I feel like, and what scares me with them, if if they do decide to fully ban it for under 16s, that actually a lot of stuff in school is online. A lot of the things they access through school has to be online, and the online world isn't going to go anywhere. So I think it's a better choice to teach our children how to safely do it, how to be responsible. And tech companies do play a part in that, because they need to be making sure that these companies aren't creating harmful ways, to harm children. And I know that it's easier said than done, maybe, but I just feel like our children are growing up in such a world that is so tech savvy now, that if we can ensure that we install it into them young enough that, it's great if you use it in the right way, but there needs to be some kind of filter system, doesn't there, as to how and what they can see. And
I think in terms of our own usage of social media, etc., I feel like it's an amplification of who you are. Because I look at my Facebook and it's actually, for the most part, a really wholesome, funny, animal populated, a bit of activism, bit of feminism, a bit of social justice kind of place. My feed is that, but that's because that's who I am. So it's a bit of an amplifier of who you are, and that's a really, really good thing when it's going well. But when it's not going well, it's a really, really bad thing, because an amplifier, an algorithm that can notice patterns that suggest that your mental health is a bit low right now, might send you an advert for, I don't know, a mental health app, for example, just as a sort of like an appropriate sort of like use of the algorithm. They could be used for other things as well. And it's just, if we know that and the tech knows that, it also knows how to stop it. And I don't think it's difficult to stop it. I think if they know how to exploit it, they also know how to shut it down. They do also know how to shut it down. And I don't necessarily think we should be taking phones off children, but I think it's going to be really hard to do. And in Australia, for example, they were saying that, yes, okay, it's worked to a point, but it actually just means children are now putting in a different age, which means they're not protected in the same way. Even the protections they did have are now not there. So there's ups and downs to this, and I think that people will make up their own minds. I don't think there is one perfect answer. We have to make the least bad decision, because we've gone too far down this road now to kind of, to just cut it off. I don't know. It's a bit of a weird one, isn't it? Do you know, we weren't planning on talking about mobile phones today. That wasn't on the agenda. But, we're ADHD, and therefore we've taken the tangent. And I think it was quite a cool conversation.
no, that's fine.
Okay, so in terms of parenting, because we are, as parents, muddling along, doing the best we can with what we have and what we know, and feeling the criticism of everybody else for everything we don't manage, and criticising ourselves for everything that we don't manage. As you know, one of the things about this podcast is we always ask people, what is your North Star thing? What is it that you want to convey to people that you wish you had known, that you think is a powerful thing to know?
I think the biggest thing for me, and what I would want everybody who's, even if you're just starting out at this, even if you've been in it for years, but you still feel like you're just a ship that's sinking very slowly and nothing seems to be, going the way it needs to go. I think the biggest thing for me has always been when I learned that I wasn't on my own, because professionals, you go into schools and meet with teaching staff, and you go to your local authority and you'll have all these meetings, and you'll have all these meetings with people that think they know best. And there's so much blame, there's so much shame, and there's so much just stigma around the fact that your child may be struggling to attend school. And I remember feeling so very isolated and so alone, that I remembered I remember crying just so many times, driving home from meetings and crying and going to the bathroom just so I could cry because I didn't know anyone who had spoken up or said, about what was going on with their child. And I think my key message is that there are so many of us, and we are all going through or have been through this situation, and you are not alone. You are never as alone as they will make you feel. And even in the very, very depths of, despair, when I had a suicidal child at one point, and I remembered thinking, this is not what I signed up for. Why is this happening? And I remembered speaking to Yasenko that day, and I remembered she just kind of brushed me off as if it was normal teenage, behavior. And I was like, it's not normal that my child feels suicidal because of school. And I just went home and sobbed, and I just didn't know where to turn. And that was the first night that I decided, I'm just going to write. I'm just going to start writing everything down that I feel. And I put it out on my personal Facebook page at first and just babbled away to everybody on my friends list. And everybody was just like, we didn't know you were going through this. And I'm like, I've been trying to hold it together for months and I don't know what to do. And then I just hit the wall of, I think I'd reached up and beyond and thought, I can't suffer in silence anymore. I need to find people. And then I did. And now I know that there's thousands of people in the same position, and heartbreakingly thousands of children as well. But if we're all alone, then we're all alone together, aren't we? So we can all be together. That the madness can just consume us all. But I know, that's the thing. And learning that we can laugh and we can joke together, regardless of what might be going on in the madness and the chaos outside. We need to be able to laugh with one another about certain things and what we find funny, because without that, oh my gosh, I think I would have cracked up a long time ago. And, just being able to find your people is, I think, the biggest thing. Find your people, find the ones that understand, and hold on to them, because it's like gold dust sometimes. You just, once you find it, hang on to it, because it will save your life. It saved my life. I'm pretty certain of it.
Yeah. And I'm so, thank you so much for coming on today. And I'm so glad that we are part of a community of professionals who are, started off as parents who now kind of do things for others because of the journey that we've been on. And thank you for being part of that community with me as well, because I'm so grateful to be part of it, because it can be so lonely. And so, yeah, people find more people, find your people, and just know that you're not on your own, because you're absolutely not. Michaela, it's been lovely to have you. It would be lovely to have another conversation another time, I'm sure. But thank you so much. We didn't discuss everything that we planned to discuss, but we discussed other things. And it's so topical, isn't it? The neat stuff makes sense. And of course, the stuff around phones. So bang on the nail in terms of being topical. Until next time, everybody, thank you for watching or listening. Thank you for listening to ADHD Wise Podcast. ADHD Wise exists to help bridge understanding and support for people exploring ADHD and broader neurodiversity. If you would like to know more about us and our services, please visit www.adhdwise.uk. Follow ADHD Wise UK on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok and LinkedIn. Take care, and we'll see you next time.